Imagine spending 3 days making the perfect clay pot. You carry it to the market because you need fish for dinner. But the fisherman doesn't want a pot. He wants grain. So you find a farmer, but the farmer doesn't need pottery either. He wants a goat. Now you must somehow turn one clay pot into a goat, the goat into grain, and the grain into fish. Congratulations, you have discovered why humans needed money. But here's the surprising part. Money did not begin with coins, and there probably wasn't one clever person who suddenly invented it. Money developed gradually as human societies became larger and trade became more complicated. In small communities, people didn't always need money. Families and neighbors exchanged gifts, shared food, and remembered favors. You might give your neighbor some barley today, trusting that they would help you repair your roof later. There was no coin and no written contract, only memory, relationship, and trust. Direct barter happened too. Someone might exchange a clay pot for grain or a sheep for an axe. But barter had a serious problem. For an exchange to work, both people needed to want exactly what the other person offered at the same time. Economists call this the double coincidence of wants. Our potter wants fish, but the fisherman doesn't want pottery. The trade immediately becomes difficult. People needed something that almost everyone would accept. Different societies used different valuable goods. Some used cattle, others used salt, shells, cloth, grain, or metal. In ancient Mesopotamia, barley became especially important. Everyone needed food. Barley could be measured, and it could be stored inside large temple warehouses. A worker might be promised a certain quantity of barley for completing a job. A merchant might calculate the value of cloth using barley. A family might pay a debt with sacks of grain. Barley was beginning to perform the job of money, but carrying sacks of grain everywhere was inconvenient. Grain was heavy, could become wet, and might be eaten by insects or rats. So another invention became essential written records. More than 5,000 years ago, Mesopotamian scribes recorded transactions on clay tablets. Using a reed stylus, they marked who owed grain, who had delivered goods, and who had received payment. Money was no longer only an object, it could also be information. A record of debt stored on clay. Silver was also used as a standard of value in Mesopotamia. But people were not necessarily exchanging shiny silver coins. They used lumps, rings, and fragments of silver. The metal had to be placed on a balance scale and weighed. One important measurement was the shekel. Long before the word described a modern coin, a shekel was a unit of weight. If a merchant wanted to purchase cloth, the buyer could weigh out an agreed amount of silver. This was more portable than barley. However, weighing and testing metal during every transaction was slow. A dishonest merchant could mix valuable silver with cheaper materials or use inaccurate weights. Around the 7th century, the people of Lydia, in what is now Western Turkey, introduced some of the earliest known coins. These early coins were made from electrum, a natural mixture of gold and silver. A small piece of metal was placed on a die and struck with a hammer. The stamped symbol acted like an official guarantee. Instead of weighing a random metal lump every time, merchants could recognize the coin and trust its expected value. Coins made trade faster. Governments also found them useful for paying soldiers, collecting taxes, and controlling markets. But coins were still heavy in large amounts. Centuries later, merchants in China began using paper documents to represent money. Eventually, Chinese governments produced official paper currency, a piece of paper at very little practical value by itself. People accepted it because they trusted that other people and the government would accept it too. That reveals the real secret behind money. Money can be grain, silver, coins, paper, or even numbers displayed on a screen. The material can change completely. What matters is shared trust. Money works because a community agrees that it represents value and believes it can be exchanged again in the future. So who invented money? There was no single inventor and no single moment. Farmers, merchants, scribes, craftspeople, rulers, and entire communities gradually created it by solving different problems. Barley made value measurable. Clay tablets recorded debts. Silver made wealth portable. Coins made payments faster. Paper made large amounts easier to carry. Modern money is simply the newest chapter in that long experiment. And the next time you buy something with a card or tap a screen, remember, behind all that technology is the same ancient idea. This has value because we all agree that it does. And somehow, that agreement changed the world.